Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the MXGP Podcast Show on Vital MX. We have begun the furious race to the final checkered flag as Loket always signals the race to the finale. We now move to Lommel, Sweden, all of the staples for the final chapter. And the 2025 FIM Motocross World Championship is only heating up at this stage. Romain Febvre is 10 points clear of Lucas Coenen. Lucas Coenen won the Czech Grand Prix with 1-2 scores. Romain Febvre went 5-1 for second overall. And therefore, Coenen took another healthy chunk out of his title rival. It could have perhaps been a little larger, but Febvre rebounded well, as we will discuss on this episode. And in MX2, Simon Längenfelder rebounded well after a terrible qualifying race, in my personal opinion, to really stamp his authority once more and make up for all of the points that he lost in Finland. So he looks very, very good to seal the deal now. But a lot can happen. There's a long way to go. And we're going to get into all of that and so much more on this episode of the MXGP Podcast Show, which is backed, of course, by Polisport and Prox Racing Parts. We may even have a Prox Racing Parts race update in a couple of weeks, as our contact there is embarking on quite an interesting journey, which I don't really quite understand, but I'm excited to learn more, and maybe I'll even bring the story to this podcast. I'm your host, Lewis Phillips. As per usual, that was a very long introduction. I almost forgot that this wasn't a one-man show. I'm joined by Paddock Pass Podcasts, Adam Wheeler. How's it going?
Hello, Lewis. That was a very ambiguous take with a Pro X message. I'm not too sure what you meant by it. If you can, you're trying not to say as much as you can, or
No,
what was the...
Anton, our contact there, I guess. I don't know what his exact title is. He's very powerful and very good at what he does. He's doing a enduro race on a twin shock in Poland, I want to say. And it seems like this is quite a big event. And I don't really understand the event itself, but it's on the weekend after Lommel. So stay tuned.
Oh, okay. 2 weeks then. Well, less.
And how are you, Adam?
Yes, good. I'd like you to be incredibly grateful that we're doing this podcast because I'm still technically on holiday. Even though I have been working each day, I think the only difference is a little bit of routine. So after work, being able to jump in a swimming pool or venture to the beach, that's the only difference. But it all comes to a crashing halt when we're swapping the sand of the beach for the sand of Lommel this weekend, Lommelwood, and the Belgian Grand Prix. I'm sad you're not going to be there, Lewis. I was holding out hope that you would fly in at the last minute.
To be honest, I'm still holding out hope that I may fly in at the last minute, but I think that dream is over. And I've actually changed my MXON travel as a result to get in a day earlier because I am going to be busy with hugs and high fives and whatever else. Lommel was going
to Indianapolis?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
I got in Thursday night and I changed it to Thursday morning so that I have an extra day to be friends with everyone. I want you to be extremely grateful to me because I do this podcast called LVK. I don't know if you've heard of it.
It's award-winning, apparently.
I'm yet to see the award or the promotion in pay that would come with that. And we discussed your book, which, to be honest with you, I'm still confused about what the title is. Is it Motorcycle Grand Prix or is it Insider Stories from World Championship Racing? Or is it together?
It's the whole thing.
Okay,
it's the whole thing.
That's what I thought, but I feel like I get it
It's the most ridiculous title ever. And it just, as I mentioned, there's zero creativity in it. And it's quite depressing. But the theory is, according to the publisher and their wise sales department, is that when you type motorcycle into Amazon or some other kind of book store website, then that will pop up immediately. It's a book about MotoGP for the most part. So if you type MotoGP into a search engine, it might not come up at all because it's nowhere in the title because of licensing. So I don't know.
Well, if that was their goal, I think you should be thankful that you didn't end up with the title Bike Racing or something like that.
Yeah. I know.
But I spoke about your book, and already there's a comment from someone called Lee Boy who said, "I am so glad that Adam Wheeler is finally getting noticed in the US moto community. Dude is a legend in the MotoGP paddock, and fuck GL and Ping," which is a different situation. That's unrelated to you. That's unrelated to you. But the reason for reading the comment is this man, he wanted you to have more credit, and here you are.
I know it's that's very nice. But I feel a bit sorry for you, Lewis, because you've been a bit through the sort of what's the word? I don't know, in dire
The ringer?
straits, it seems. People, yeah, the ringer, people have been character assassinating you. And it's not very pleasant. Is that an indictment of moto media over there, or what's a succinct opinion on that?
Well, you can answer this for me because this is my greatest question. Does this infighting and sniping happen in MotoGP at all? I'm sure there's media people who don't like each other and like, oh yeah, fuck that guy, or trying to take deals. But publicly, on the Paddock Pass podcast, do you ever just berate fellow media?
No, I
Oh,
think it may
odd.
happen between there's been cases of it between some Spanish colleagues, uh, a kind of loose, well, way to use the term, I guess. But no, not really.
No.
But then, of course, this whole mess is just increasing visibility. It's either, from what I can gather, it's a very kind of poor and ill-informed and sensational take just to gather views and hits and opinion. And we're talking about it. So in that respect, it worked, even though it wasn't very nice for you. So that was the general purpose of it, I guess.
Well, I think there's more to it because I phoned Ping to get to the bottom of the issue because I was blindsided because I've never spoken to either of them. So like at that point, be like, whoa. And the phone call was extremely aggressive and kind of reinforced all of the public statements even more personally, maybe. So
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Okay.
took shots at my family, took shots at many different elements of Lewis. So and also told me that this is America and we have freedom of speech, which tells you everything you really need to know, doesn't it? I mean, that
Yeah.
line is kind of indicative of the mindset and the people. Anyway,
Uh,
MXGP.
yes. Yeah.
That took
I
a
don't
turn.
wish to
Anyway,
comment any further.
we're glad that Adam Wheeler is getting the credit he deserves.
Thank you.
But it confuses me when people say that you're a legend in the MotoGP paddock without mentioning MXGP. Because in my opinion, and I guess I'm biased because I'm from this world, you're more of a legend in MXGP than you are MotoGP.
More of a leg end, I'd say.
Again, I guess you can't really
But
comment on this because it's quite. Yeah, I think I'm a legend in equal.
no, it's good that the book gets some traction. But I wrote two books about motocross before I even got published anything to do with MotoGP. So and we've talked about that.
Yes,
Um,
and I want you to do one on
but yeah.
motocross in this form, but I don't know if you can because I doubt anyone would commission it.
Uh, well, you get to the point if this one is successful enough, then publishers tend to say to you, "Oh, what else can you do?" Because your name gets a little bit of traffic, and if people like the way you write, or it gets reviews or publicity or promotion, then you can say, "Well, actually, I've got this project that is this." And then it's just about selling it again, like I had to sell the MotoGP one. And that's also sort of how I sold the second motocross book, because after the Jamie Dobb story,
What was the
then the
second
publisher
one?
said the second one was more just like a yearbook.
Oh
It
yes,
was,
yes, yes.
I said to them, look, I'd like to do kind of a take on a motocross year involving photographs with our sort of friend and colleague Ray Archer. And yeah, but I would write it in a different way. So it would be very much from the perspective of a journalist being at every Grand Prix and what was seen, what was heard, and so on. And they went, yeah, let's do it. And then after that, but the problem was that it was a little bit more of an expensive book to make because once you have all those photographs inside, I mean, some of the plates were even in black and white, which was a bit ridiculous. And this was what in 2004. So yeah, it was quite some time ago. But it'll be interesting to do a similar one like that, Lewis. A kind of very much a first-hand opinion on motocross and supercross. There'll be some good stories to tell, I think, but it's just a case of would anyone want to pay for it, essentially?
Yeah, because I mean, I know very little about MotoGP, but I'm very much engulfed in it now. And I actually feel like I know, similar to Drive to Survive. I was thinking this morning. Obviously, it's very different to a Netflix series. I'm sure you're aware of this. But I feel like it's had a very similar impact on me because it's just given me enough context to now I'm like, okay, now I know
Okay.
why I should cheer for this person, why this person's the way they are, why this person winning a race matter. Like it just provides a bit of a wider view where now when I watch MotoGP, I will be more What's the opposite of passive? Active.
Yeah, engaged.
Yeah, I'll have a little bit more to it. Well, a lot more to it. I'm 60% through. I've started rereading it again, as I mentioned, and I particularly enjoyed and I'm going to butcher the name, the Pecco Bagnaia segment
Oh,
chapter.
that's okay. You got near
Um,
enough.
Thank you. So maybe there's a future for
Uh,
me in MotoGP yet.
Please just don't point out the mistakes to me. That'll be kind of more settling for my soul if you didn't sort of send me any clear typos
Okay.
because you just live in fear of them.
Well,
But should we talk about Loket?
sure, I guess we could. Why not? We've ran through all of the very important stuff that's
Um,
happening.
I have a question for you. I was thinking this actually while watching the motos. I mean, regardless of the results, and I mean, we can cover sort of the performances of the riders, of course, in a moment. But what did you think about that track and Grand Prix racing there? Because I was really conflicted. At one point, I thought, it's real sort of old school motocross. It's quite cool. You can see all the fans grouped into those sort of spectator banks that we know very well. But then, it also just looked very restrictive. And I was thinking, this is, in one way, it seems very outdated. I mean, the motors were largely defined by the starts. I know you can have maybe say the performance of Ruben Fernandez on that brand new prototype Honda goes against that because he fell off on the first corner of the second moto and came all the way back to eighth. So you could clearly still pass. But on the other hand, I just thought, I don't know, with the parity in MXGP in terms of speed and ability, it's kind of tough if you really don't get around that sort of awkward uphill left-hand first turn in a decent spot. Then the race is declared already, and I thought MXGP these days has to be more than that.
Yes, and I wholeheartedly agree that if you want to talk about a great race from the weekend, there's not a single bit of evidence that comes to mind. I can't recall a single battle, moto, race, anything that's like, wow, that was
Yeah.
incredible viewing. But I will say, when I was doing every GP, Loket was never one that I particularly looked forward to. I enjoyed being in Karlovy Vary, which is the nearby town, but Loket never stood out to me. It always felt like a bit of a nuisance. Maybe because it was expensive. So for budget
Mm.
reasons, I just detested it a little bit. But
No, I just thought it was restrictive. It was a very narrow, bitty kind of track. And even though it does draw in fans from across Europe because of its central location, it just seemed like MXGP needs to be somewhere a little bit bigger, a bit more expansive, with more possibilities. So I'm conflicted because I like the old school. I like the I don't know, the charisma of it, if that's such a word. But then on the other hand, I think it's not really appropriate for MXGP now.
no, but this is where. So now that I've got a 1,000 foot view, randomly on Saturday morning, I felt very appreciative and thankful with Locket, and actually thought to myself, I want to go back. I don't think I. I think
Okay.
these other factors hindered my judgment so much that actually, again, the racing borderline terrible, but the atmosphere, the uniqueness of the circuit, which only adds to MXGP's charm. Obviously, once again, in America, you have 11 circuits that are very, very similar. To go from Loket to Lommel on back-to-back weekends, it really encapsulates what
Yeah.
MXGP is. Now, the argument to that is there will be other hard-packed tracks. Why Loket? And I don't really have a defense to that other than the history. Of course, it would only be right if I quickly point to the fact that Locket took so much from all of us when it broke Josh Coppin's shoulder in 2007. We do this every year, so just need to get that out of the way. But no, did I expect a great race? No, I knew what Locket would offer, but I still can appreciate the charm of it, which I guess is the same as Monaco in F1 or whatever else, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Monaco, by all accounts, is a terrible race, and Loket is a terrible race. And if you go to the MXGP website and you look up the results, look at any of the lap charts. I mean, the positions for the first sort of top five barely change. I mean, where they started is where they finished. Okay, you had a few people sort of being able to find some extra places, or I'm not even going to say lines, even like segments of lines to gain a bit of time here or there. But it's more one of those GPs that throws up tense racing rather than exciting racing. And I think even the weather conspired to make it even more interesting this year because it was a mud fest on Saturday. It didn't rain on Sunday, but the track was slicker. It seemed a little bit more slower and more technical rather than sort of the dust bowl it can be in the heart of the European summer. and it still didn't really do the job, Lewis. So like I say, I'm really torn about it. I was watching on TV thinking this is, this just seems like an odd fit.
This is a question that I probably should have prepared for, so maybe I'm missing something obvious. But as of late, are we adding new European tracks to the calendar? Obviously, there was the Kimi Ring, uh,
Lugo of
Lugo, I
recent
guess. I'm
times.
just thinking if you drop Loket, is there a European option to replace it with? Because for the most part, the turnover in circuits on the calendar comes from Argentina or Indonesia or China, or we've added Australia now, Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what would replace Loket European wise. I'm sure they could find a race in Brazil, but no one wants another one of those.
Also, there's the fact that you cannot dismiss having a roster of steady promotional partners, people that have the money to make these things happen. Because if you're chopping and changing both your promotional partners as well as venues, as well as circuits, clubs, organizational bodies, the interference of national federations, as we've discussed on previous podcasts, it's not that easy to make a Grand Prix happening in terms of the price and the investment that it costs. There's maybe a handful of circuits that Ustream, in front motor racing keep in their back pocket to as a contingency, as if a Grand Prix gets called off, places like Matterley Basin or Mantova in the past or Arco de Trento, these tracks that are able to stage MXGP on a whim with a different kind of financing arrangement. I mean, they exist, but you do have venues like Tuchental, Loket, Kegums, the French GP is remarkably well organized in terms of the way the French Federation bounces it around circuits like Villars and Jean-Aunay. Motocross of Nations is also thrown into the mix there for France. So you do have these, very consistent places, and Loket is one of those. I mean, the Grand Prix has been there every single year since I remember working in motocross, going back to sort of the mid 90s. I mean, it even bounces over stuff like the last fatality we've had in Grand Prix racing, which was in the EMX, support categories. This weekend, we didn't have EMX 125 or 250. Instead, it was the 65s and 85s, which is a one-off, like they do the World Championships being a one-off event. It's the same for the European, classes. So you had these kids racing around, and was it in 2017, I think, we last lost someone at a Grand Prix, and a young Moldovan rider. And I remember on the weekend feeling shocked because the gates were still full the next day
Yes,
for
I
these
remember
classes.
that.
It was a big conflict because again, I'm sort of a contradicted man on this podcast because, one way I thought fair play for people just like thinking life goes on. We're here to race and compete. We're going to go for it. But on the other way, you're kind of like horrified that, this young kid, I mean, he was 12, 13 years old, I think, has lost his life the previous day due to sort of like a heavy crash on the famous Coppin step down, I think. And, people were just thinking, right, we're carrying on. So it was a real, there was a lot of angst that weekend, but still Loket, this circuit is the host of these European Championship classes and these young riders going around that particular track. So it's like kind of steadfast that there's a Grand Prix you're going to count on in MXGP. It's the Czech Grand Prix at Loket.
Well, and this isn't Grand Prix relevant, but in COVID year 2020, it was the Czech Championship that was the first to launch back into
Yeah,
life because Tom
yeah,
Vial
well
and Rene
remembered.
Hopper went there to race because it was the only option. So Czech as a whole, Czechia, they've got a new name. They changed from Czechia, no, they changed from Czech Republic to Czechia to make it fit onto their sportswear easier, I guess, is what I found
But
out.
yeah, less characters. Yeah,
Yeah,
but it's not that the MotoGP changed to Czechia, but the MXGP still kept the Grand Prix of Czech Republic.
yes, and that
So
points to the um
the vision.
yes. But also to this whole conversation, this is why motocross MXGP specifically needs journalism because these are great questions for David Luongo. I mean, I guess he would just say these are great partners. This place has history.
Yeah.
We care about preserving the history of the championship. Loket is ultimately a very good tool to have in their pocket because when someone says you're getting rid of history, we're going to too many man-made tracks, etc., they can go Loket, see. So
Yeah, and they somehow still wedge the whole paddock in there. And, I think your point is great because Loket has been paired with Lommel for I don't know how many years. So you do get that wonderful juxtaposition of racing surfaces, all in 1 week. And, that kind of offsets some of the frustrations that teams and riders may have with that sort of slippery, stony hardpack. And they can only make so many changes. I mean, we've credited the club in the past for trying to do something different with the layout. But then again, it still feels very sort of time honored and, like I said, restrictive. That's the word that sort of best fits it, in my opinion, at the moment.
Yeah, the biggest misstep in motocross in the last 2 decades is probably Loket relocating its start in 2014 and then
Yeah.
quickly realizing its mistake and acting like that never happened. Even now, it's kind of hard to see any evidence that that old or the
What
new/old start straight ever existed.
What did you think? I saw it on Twitter from a couple of people posting of this new fence that they used to separate turn two from, because there was another video posted up from a Czech national race where somebody tried to do the jump, one of the first little kind of speed jumps after turn one, and went completely off the track and went down sort of Chad Reed style, this massive descent back to the start gate. I mean, it could have been horrific. And after that, they erected this sort of steel fence. I mean, I agree. It's a bit kind of like Monaco. If you're an F1 car, if you touch that thing, if you hit that with your bike, you're going to spiral straight back into the course of the rest of the pack, and there's nowhere to go. But then maybe it just forces riders to have more caution from there, through there. Again, the old cliche of the throttle works both ways is something I think, professional racers had to be more mindful of.
Maybe this is a very elementary way of looking at it, but I feel as though the risk of hitting the fence is far less than the risk of falling down that drop and quite likely ending up paralyzed or whatnot. Whereas hitting that
It's the
fence at
secondary
speed,
effect. It's the secondary effect. I mean,
yeah,
it's not just the hit with the fence. It's actually the fact that you're bouncing back into the way of people. That's
true.
the main, because there's nowhere to go. Yeah, and you could say, right, I can take my chances by slithering down the hill. Maybe the bike falling on top of me or me falling awkwardly. But then, if you're bouncing off the fence and there's still 20 riders still to come through, then that's a little bit scary. But I think, if it was a turn that required full commitment, and usually there were kind of two lines into there, you had the inside one or the outside to sort of go back up the hill, and you needed a good exit because you could line up the next section and potentially pass going into what would be kind of turn 3, 4. Now I think you just have to be a little bit more careful around there. You couldn't afford to make contact and end up on the floor.
I wonder, again, another question for David. I wonder if that is MXGP approved or if MXGP rolls in and the promoters are like, hey, we've got a fence now. And MXGP are like, oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, I don't. How does safety approvals work? I mean, it's quite strict in MotoGP with the safety commission.
You would think that they would have to alert in front and be like, hey, we're doing this. I mean, obviously with a new venue, in front staff go and inspect it and make sure it's up to code, etc. But they're not going to do that with Loket because they know what they're going to get. So I wonder if even in front are a little bit or saw the fence and were like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's not good for us.
Yes. It's and again, it's just the defense itself serves a purpose of not falling down this sheer incline. I don't know. The other solution is just to change the track, somehow modify it even further. But then you're removing one of the great sort of spectator atmosphere alleys of MXGP.
It is funny, like Loket has so much history to it between Coppin's crash, of course. It was Prado's only GP win in 2021. Max Anstey crashed in that section after
Paul
in
Jonas with the
2015.
concussion. Yeah.
Okay, I said there was a lot of history and probably should. Kevin Strybos is the king of Loket. He won his first GP there, and then multiple others in 2005.
Nicolas Aubin, I think, won his first GP going back
that rings a bell.
towards the end of the last decade, well, the decade before. Tony Cairoli hated the place, but always seemed to do pretty well there, I seem to remember. Clement de Salle, I think, was also a very strong rider in Loket, just because of that marbly texture of the hard pack. It really was a track that rewarded riders that could search out grip in the best way. But there are other sketchy places on the track. I mean, the one right down at the bottom of the hill, that was faster than it used to be. Also, the descent going left before you sort of run up fast to the finish line. I mean, if you lose control there, you're going to basically flop straight into Coppin's corner. I'm surprised there hasn't been more kind of accidents in that particular section, and that's where Jeffrey Hurling's dislocated his shoulder in 2010 and sort of ruined his what was otherwise a very impressive first season as a 15-year-old in GB racing.
And started a very tumultuous affair with Loket for Jeffrey Hurlings. He dislocated his femur hip with Czechia in 2015.
Yes, and he had a World Championship celebration ready for 2014. He only basically had to turn up in Loket, I think. But then, broke his femur, a couple of weeks beforehand.
And then 2012 in the battle with Tommy Searle, I think Jeffrey crashed, caught Tommy back up, passed him again, and then Tommy, I think, admitted that made him cry. So there's lots going on at Loket, and lots going on in this podcast because we're 26 minutes in, and I'm not sure we've really done anything. So I guess we should hustle. Lucas Coenen is now very much a factor in this championship, more so than ever before. His recent run in the last 9 GPs is incredible. He hasn't fallen outside of the top 2 at all in overall. He's actually only dropped outside of the top 2 in 2 of the last 18 motos. So all of those stats, if I'm Romain Febvre, if someone presents those to me, I suddenly become quite alarmed. It's a 10-point difference. It's effectively nothing with 6 rounds to go. Is it time it's certainly time for Romain to worry, but is it time to label Coenen the favourite?
Yeah, I think so. He's in a nice position, I think, where he can just chip away at the lead, but he's making significant inroads. And while Romain is making the mistakes that we'd expect Lucas Coenen to make, the deficit is nothing now. And Coenen, what has that? 9 consecutive podium finishes. I mean, that is the definition of momentum. And he's won the last 2 GPs in a row. After the GP at the weekend in Czech Republic, he was already talking about looking forward to Lommel. I mean, he's going to go into that home GP scenario more confident than ever. I mean, Febvre's going to have to realistically say, I need to finish right behind Lucas, in Belgium. Maybe he loses the red plate, in Lommel. But at the moment, it's looking heavily stacked towards the KTM rider. But I don't know, Lewis, is the 450 going to bite him at some point, or has it happened already pre-season with the wrist injury?
I'm still very much on the edge of my seat, expecting there to be a rookie mistake at some point. Although, again, the evidence says that we're past that now, and he is just rock solid. A negative on both sides. Romain's mistake in the first moto very much gave me flashbacks to Turkey 2021, where he was leading, I want to say, maybe second, I think leading on the last lap and just tipped over and ultimately lost the number of points that cost him the World Championship.
Yeah.
Also, Romain, I don't want to say he has a reputation for these silly mistakes that aren't needed, but they do creep up from time to time. And I think if you're Lucas or the KTM squad, you look at that mistake and you go, he's still the Romain with holes in his armor and we can exploit this. Similarly, I think that everyone is forgetting that Lommel last year was horrific for Lucas Coenen. Just terrible, messy. There was on-track disaster, but there was also off-track issues with the family, and it was messy from start to finish, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. There was nothing good about that Grand Prix. So this, although it looks like it's lining up for him, home GP, the sand, etc., I'm watching Lommel very curious if Lucas and the Coenen family as a collective have figured out these issues and if he can actually capitalize, because after last year's Belgian Grand Prix, I'm not certain at all.
I think the second moto in Czech Republic where Febvre finally got the start, because that was his big handicap in Finland in the previous round. Finally got the start and managed to break free and win. I think that was pivotal, and it was absolutely crucial because he's been just conceding points, for the last couple of weeks. And to be able to sort of reverse that trend was a big boost again before we go to someone like Lommel. I mean, Romain is also a really good sand rider, so it's not as if it's a scenario like Jeffrey Hurlings and Tommy Searle, where Tommy Searle in 2012 knew that going into the sand, he was up against it. I think Febvre can be a little bit more optimistic. especially like you said, Lewis, in the context of sort of 2024 when things didn't go so well for Lucas and on sort of, with the spotlight on him. But I think it was a big performance by Febvre to win that second race, and that could happen again because when he's pushed into a corner, then that's maybe when Febvre excels a little bit. When he's comfortable, or he's really not facing harsh adversity, then that's when perhaps the mistakes come. I don't know. It's hard to sort of put your finger on it really. And I mean, you mentioned holes in his armor and weaknesses. I struggle to really sort of find that with Febvre because I don't think he's a rider you can pressure. It's almost like he loses, and you can't say he loses concentration because he's that experienced, but there are little kind of I don't know, it's flaws there somehow, and it has been the starts up until now, and this is where Coenen has been so good because ultimately he's made back all these points and made all these results because he's Prado-esque with his starts. I still think, as we said on other podcasts, it's going to go right down to the end of the season, and who's going to get to know tracks. China, obviously the riders know, but in Australia is going to be a new thing. Oh, was it a new layout in Shanghai? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a new venue, but it's a new someone messaged me and said we're going arena cross racing in China, so I don't think anyone's excited about it. But then when are they?
Well, two unseen tracks. I mean, who's going to be able to, because it's going to be what you'd think less than 20-point difference in the championship at this rate at the end of the season.
Uddevalla has a new layout as well.
Oh, really? Okay, that's news.
Yes, I saw a very poorly filmed Instagram video of it, and it looked terrible, to be honest. Very upset. I like Uddevalla, and I was not inspired by this video of the new layout. And then also add in, I would bet that come Sweden, Uddevalla, we will have Jeffrey, Tim, and Jonas back. So, like, the field is going to get deeper. There's a lot of elements to this, and okay, Jonas is potentially an ally for Febvre, but I don't think Jeffrey is going to be an ally for Coenen. So, like, there's not really much support there from the influx of new riders. Maybe we get Jeffrey back this weekend. I think it's going to be an 11th hour decision, as is the case with Jeffrey on most occasions.
Yeah, I think the team has slotted him on the entry lists, both in the Czech Republic and also in Belgium. But then, yeah, you just won't know. I mean, you'd have to imagine if Herlings is feeling halfway decent, then he's going to try Lommel because he can finish top 5 of one arm, essentially.
Yeah, but I don't think he needs to do Lommel. I think he needs to do Uddevalla. So I think he can take this one off if he wants.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, it's when the injury clause kicks in and, there's all sort of complications like that. But also, Lewis, how does the chemistry work now? Because if he is allegedly leaving Red Bull KTM after sort of 16 years, what does he do? Does he try to help Coenen as much as he can? Or does he sort of not really give a shit and just want to win more motos?
I think that Jeffrey Herlings very much enjoys bonus money, and unless someone can guarantee him that if he foregoes a position to Lucas Coenen, he's going to get paid, I think that he looks after his bank account. I think that's fairly certain. And in a similar vein, you mentioned it, Ruben Fernandez was on the 2027 Honda 450, the production model of that, and are they going to give that to Geyser? I would think not, because Geyser's out. Are they going to want to be like, hey, this is our new technology and our new platform?
Yeah.
Fernandez
is out.
Yeah.
So they need data on it. They need mileage.
I guess Fernandez is less of a risk. And once again, I've said this a few times, very in touch with the rumors on where Tim was going, on where Jeffrey's going, on where Glenn's going, on Calvin. I know zero about Ruben Fernandez. I have not heard or received a tip or even heard something that's completely ridiculous, like he's going to race on the moon. I have heard zero about Ruben Fernandez.
I heard that he wants to stay in, that Honda want to keep him somewhere in the structure. So what does that mean? Does he ride for Motor Blues, who have re-signed Horgmo? Ferrato is destroyed his knee again. I mean, we know that team has been decimated. Prugnieres, are we saying that right? He had a sort of half decent 450 debut. I don't know the results off the top of my head. I can look. And I tell you what, why you tell me the reason why, let me start again. While you talk about the reason why you don't know anything about Fernandez, I'm going to text somebody and see if I can get some update on him.
Yeah, I don't know why, but to be honest with you, you were just, when you said about him staying in the Honda family, this is where Honda must be kicking themselves to a degree because the standing construct team would be perfect. that would honestly be a match made in heaven. I do think that to an extent, Ruben isn't necessarily a shoe-in for a full factory ride, but for a team like standing construct Honda, 100%. I think that works perfectly. But that's gone, so I don't know. And we all think that Honda SR Moto Blues Motor is going to be Horgmo and Benistant, although that's not confirmed. But the fact that Benistant's been working with Yves DeMario, who's the team trainer
Yeah.
all year, points to that being the case. Ferrato's gone. I don't know what he'll do. I'd imagine either Ferrato or Guadagnini will have to end up on beta next to Ben.
Feeling very sad about that. Alberto Ferrato is a character that just, MXGP needs, and he's just been shoved to the wings, through injury for the better part of 3 years. A big shame.
Yes, but also I think that if he hadn't turned his back on the KTM group, he would be in a more positive position now. I think he gambled on himself a little too hard. Also interesting, we're batting around now, that Ferrato is trying to crowdfund the 15,000 euros he needs for surgery. It's kind of a reflection on the state of MXGP. Like, okay, Ferrato isn't a podium finisher. He's not a big star. But the fact that he's crowdfunding 15,000 euros and he's a top 10 regular, that tells you quite a lot about the state of the sport.
It's pretty sad, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed.
We don't know the personal circumstances behind that, of course. But the fact that he has to do it or feels the need to reach out, to get that assistance is worrying.
Well, from what I know, the second rider on Honda SR Moto Blues Motor is paid 30,000 euros, I want to say.
Yeah, that's fucking disgraceful, isn't it? I mean, if you cannot pay a rider, not even nowhere near a market rate for what they deserve, then you should not be in the paddock. I mean, get the fuck out. If you can, a mechanic can earn more than that, and that is wrong.
It's certainly no more than 50. I could find it. I've got proof. No, a rider, it'll make you laugh if I told you what rider this is. A rider, I said to a rider, so how much did X team offer you for next year then? Talking 2026. And he replied, a mechanic salary. And I was like, oh, okay. That's,
yeah.
And this, I wish I could tell you who said that to me. Remind me, I'll tell you. But I don't even know how we got down this rabbit hole. I have no idea what Ruben Fernandez is going to do. Because if there is no room at Honda SR Moto Blues Motor, beta?
I've asked.
Antic?
I've asked. So we'll see if we get an answer. And if we get an answer, I'll let you know. But I have 2 questions for you. One, what's your latest take or opinion on Glenn Coldenoff? Because he jumped on the podium again, somewhat surprisingly. If it had been Lommel, I would have said fine. But to see him on the podium in Loket, was that also just about the good start in the second moto? And secondly, just to finish off the Coenen Febvre thing, which way are you leaning now? Are you still kind of more green, or are you veering more towards orange?
I said on the last podcast that Lucas would take the red plate at some point, but Febvre would still win. I now feel adamant that Lucas will take the red plate at some point, and I'm less certain of the second one. I don't believe that Lommel is as imperative as everyone is making out, because ultimately they are both great sand riders, so I expect them both to be on the podium in some order. I do believe that the return of Jeffrey and Tim will play a role, because ultimately that's going to be pressure on Romain and Lucas. They're not going to be able to look around on lap 1 and see a Ruben or a Yargo and go, okay, I can relax here. I've got this under control. If they look around on lap 1 and see a Jeffrey or a Tim, they're going to panic a little more. Like, imagine if you're Lucas and Romain takes a whole shot and Jeffrey and Tim are between you. It's impossible, just human nature, to relax in that scenario. So how do you respond? And actually, interestingly, I wanted to mention this. It was obvious that the qualifying race and the way that played out had worked into the riders' psyches entering the second moto, because Romain was very keen to get out front and establish an advantage as he did in the qualifying race, and Coenen was very keen to not let that happen a la the qualifying race. But that just also points to Loket's lack of passing and opportunity. And your other point was Coldenoff. Honestly, I'm late to the party, but the respect I have for Coldenoff and Wilvo and not Wilvo and Louis Vosters and Fantic and Kevin Strybos, doing phenomenal things. I'm surprised by this stat, and we'll enter Lewis's stat corner here because I have a lot of useless information for you. Coldenoff has had 5 podiums this year. He needs 1 more to match his best
Best
total
ever.
in a season. Yeah, which
Oh,
surprised me.
wow.
You would think that Koldenoff's had a season with 10 plus podiums, wouldn't you? Certainly not six being his highest. But
But considering his first one was in 2015, 10 years ago, it's still quite an impressive career, to sort of take a Premier Class podium in 2015 and still be doing it in 2025. There's not many riders who have done that.
yeah, I just, off the top of my head, I would have presumed that Koldenhoff had a lot more podiums in a single season than six, but here we are. Fantic have
Does
now,
he stay on Ducati then next
okay,
year with Vosters? What's
so
your opinion? What's your opinion?
I'm across this now. I've moved on from the Jeffrey and the Tim situations because we figured those out. So now Koldenhoff is my priority. And it certainly seems, I don't really know why or understand why, but from all angles, it certainly seems as though there is a common consensus that Glenn is not going to go to Ducati with Louis Vosters. And I don't know why that would be because I can't even speculate. I don't know why that would be. As I said on this podcast weeks and weeks ago, exclusively, it's now gone around and I've not seen a single credit for this podcast. Glenn does have options in America to race pro motocross next year. And I think if that lines up, he would do it. But that's nowhere near confirmed or finalized. So that still exists in the ether. And if neither of those options play out, I don't know. I would like ultimately now that Ducati have lost Tim and Jeffrey, they're not going to get a rider better than Koldenhoff. So
Yeah.
unless
And also,
Koldenhoff has trepidation about the all-new platform and the gremlins, and maybe he looks at Sewer and goes, that's a little too inconsistent for my liking. I don't know.
but also Coldenhoff, as well as Ruben Fernandez, they're sort of in a battle to the death for P3 in the championship, which is not only a great payday, but then, how can a rider who finishes top three or top five even in the World Championship not really have like a factory saddle for the next season? I'm a bit puzzled by that. I thought he would have been a lock-in already for Fosters and Ducati.
I chucked it out there to someone a few weeks ago, like, could he go back to KTM if they're losing Jeffrey and they've only got Coenen on a 450? On that note, I think it's not confirmed, but I think the safe bet is that DeWolf will in fact move to a 450, stay on Husqvarna, and there will be Lucas Coenen on a KTM 450, Kai DeWolf on a Husqvarna 450. Again, not confirmed, but I think that's where it's heading.
But then that means the Austrian team don't have any Premier Class rider.
No, and I think
They'll be
and that's a
MS2.
very interesting development because all of the team deals, Alpine Stars, Aero, etc., you would think those are linked to, or the monetary value linked to that comes with Jeffrey. If they are going to roll out a team of Adamo, Rossi, and let's say they take Längenfelder in-house, I'd imagine the team sponsors are going to be a little bit like, I think we want to break on the money we've been spending. So, but then equally, I don't think adding Koldenhoff would help that situation much. So it's an interesting dynamic of ultimately the Austrian team has been the team that's lost in the KTM shuffle, which is bizarre because it's the only team that's theirs.
But then if it does become the main focus for MX2, I mean, Sasha Kuhner will be the outlier because he'll be with his brother. But then, and then what happens to Simon Lagenfelder is another big question, which we keep circling around, and there's no point commenting on any further, I think, unless we get some sort of hot, juicy rumor. But I mean, he could be world champion, and nobody's really sort of pegging him to one team or one manufacturer yet, which I find puzzling. But yeah, you could have the Decali faction running the world champion in MXGP, his twin, and another. And then Austrian side running maybe 3 MX2 riders. I don't know. It's kind of complicated. But we've been saying that for weeks now. Update on Ruben Fernandez. Nothing signed yet. He's talking with people. He wants to stay inside the Honda family, and he's actually waiting to get some word if he can have a works bike. So perhaps, I don't know, could HRC run 3 450s next year?
Okay, new idea. We know from fairly good sources that Honda are trying to get Simon out of his KTM contract and bring him into the HRC fold as an MX2 rider. We said on last week's podcast, if they don't get Simon, what are they going to do? I can't think of another attractive MX2 rider. So what if the fallback is if we don't get Simon, we run one MX2 rider, Valerio Lata, and a trio of 450s. That sounds doable. I like that.
Depends how much Japan are investing in the 250, and whether one rider is sufficient enough for that or not.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's evolved, but when the 250 program started up again, the word was it was very Giacomo led, not HRC led.
Yes,
So if that's still the
true.
case, I'd imagine there's some flexibility.
Also, if you're Fernandez, if you've been sort of cut, it's not like you've been cast out or you've been swapped out for a rider that's sort of equal standing. I mean, you can say Tom Vial's a two-time world champion, two-time title winner in Supercross. That arguably bigger profile. Well, definitely a bigger profile. And then, of course,
Oh, yeah.
Jeffrey Herlings needs no explanation whatsoever. So I don't think Ruben can sit
Allegedly.
there thinking, yeah, yeah, allegedly. Well, I
Okay.
mean, if it is those two, then that is a significant upgrade, you could say, for HRC over Ruben Fernandez. Tim Geiger, okay, that's a point of discussion that we've already sort of been over. But yeah, I don't think Fernandez can be sitting at home on the sofa thinking, well, I've been hard done by there. But
No, he's
then,
had his shot. He's had multiple years. They've stuck with him through injury. He's had his shot.
yeah, but he could finish third in the World Championship. What more do you want? Especially when your lead rider has been sitting on the bench for most of the season.
It's true. And with HRC's past of second riders, Bogas, Bobashev was solid, but he got injured a lot.
Well,
Um,
Bobby Chef was top three as well, but
yeah,
I'm
no,
I'm trying
I
to remember
regret
if that
saying that.
year did he earn another contract, or maybe he was also in the same boat where HRC were like, we're keeping Bobby because he's a hard rider, he's a fantastic rider to work with. He was kept in the team as much for his character and his professionalism as for his potential ability. And Fernandez has been chopped out, maybe because they have better options. But I also wonder what he is like to work with. Maybe his feedback isn't as good as, say, other riders.
I miss, I don't know, I'm just reminiscing because I remember when it came out that Bobashev was leaving HRC, and it was very controversial because there was rumors that it was only because of the HSF money, and otherwise Bobashev rightfully deserved his spot. He was certainly good enough, arguably similar to Fernandez. And I remember Sunday night being able to go into the HRC truck and sit down with Roger Harvey in his office and talking about it. Like, like real journalism. And America's such much more of a rush. Everyone's in a rush. No one wants to. It's much more of a
Hang
rush.
around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just randomly recalled that memory and was like, that was real journalism. I sat in an office.
But it
I,
goes to show that nothing is quite right in motocross because it seems like in the US, everybody's in a rush. Nobody wants to stick around because they're already thinking about the next race in, a matter of hours. Whereas in MXGP, everything's drawn out. It's too much time in one place.
is it?
We need like a happy medium.
Do you
Well,
really
riders
think
always
that?
complain about that, don't they? I
Yeah,
mean, they
but
always say, well, why do we have to be here Friday afternoon, and then not leave the circuit until Sunday evening? I don't know. I've told you before, Lewis, I'm an advocate for the 1 day format.
I am not, and we will battle
Why?
to the death because it's too much of a. I I don't want to like turn up at the racetrack, blink, and then go, that was a good event. I
Yeah, but you
like.
won't because on Saturday you have all the European races.
No
Plus,
one
you might have
cares.
also
No
yeah, but
one
you might
cares.
have the promote. They do obviously because in front want to keep the 2 day format because of the fans at the circuits.
That was satire. I
Uh,
was joking, everyone. I just realized that I need to start covering myself now more so because people
but you're
think I'm
telling me that
aggressive.
Roman Febvre really needs to do that many laps around Loket?
No, but a professional event needs to be bolstered, and it needs to be more than like going to a British Championship where you turn up on the morning, again, you blink, you leave, and you go, I don't really know what happened there. I love the element of MXGP and the Nations where Saturday night no one's leaving, and you all just hang around and recap what's happened. And oh, did you know? I wonder if Fevre's going to fix his bike for tomorrow because did you see how off it was there? And all rain's coming, so today was irrelevant. I love that part of it, and I equally love it. I mean, not that I necessarily follow other sports, but it's interesting to me when I'm on social media and I see F1 reaction to day one and how that'll play
Yeah.
out in day two, rather than
Okay.
being like, we ran a race, so and so won, see you next week. Like, that's boring to me.
Okay.
That's not professional sport.
I think that's great points.
Oh,
So
thank you.
I agree. I think it's a very different way of seeing each race event.
I guess it's a very media centric perspective, but equally as a fan,
No. Yeah.
I loved being able to relax and take it all in and go to the pits and go here and go there. 1 day format, you're like, again, blink, miss it. But anyway,
The recent German MotoGP, there were, I can't remember the figure now, but there was like 200,000 fans there. And when we arrived on the Thursday for media day, the camping zones, you could see them already, from Thursday sort of lunchtime. And that kind of blew my mind. I thought, people are here to like have a bit of a festival for motorsport. And that's your point for MXGP. It's not just about being able to be roaming the paddock and, I'll pop into Roger Harvey's office and then I'll go and hang out with Jeffrey, in the KTM morning and then pop into Geiger's, sort of luxurious motorhome in the evening. It's about, the fans watching some racing and then having a barbecue, a couple of beers and, waking up in the tent to see sort of the GP on Sunday. So I get it. Okay.
I'm glad we figured that out.
So Glenn Coldenough's on the periphery of having his best season in the Premier class, right?
Yes.
Fantastic. And like I said, surprising podium in Loket.
Fantastic.
Very good.
Yes.
But then maybe Jan Pansar was the man that sort of stole some of the headlines a little bit. I mean, do we need to talk more about him?
And before we do, another useless stat for you, which I feel like they need to do more with, so maybe you can pass this on. The KTM group, so inclusive of all brands, I feel like you already know this is just going to be nonsense. The KTM group, inclusive of all brands, captured their 400th Premier Class podium.
Yes, I saw your tweet.
I think that's a big deal, no?
500, yeah. 400's a bit like,
Just, I don't know. Okay, I'll start.
No, hang on. Say it to me again. 400th podium in the Premier class.
In MX1 and MXGP, because no one knows what happened before 2004. Those records are lost, so no one knows.
Well, that is also pretty impressive considering the first Premier class win was, 2005?
Okay, you're coming around.
And then their first championship was not until 2010.
Yes, you're coming around.
Okay.
Obviously,
but Tony Cairoli must have contributed about 130 of those.
Well, 23 riders contributed to the total. Cairoli added 127 to it. And our very good friend Jeffrey, who we just love, contributed 74. So that you're already just shy of 200 there. And then you had Ramon, Kenneth Gunderson, Ben Townley, Jonathan Barragan, Kevin Strybos, Max Nagel, Ken Dodika, as you said, Michael Alessi.
Koldenoff.
Yes, Koldenoff, Roxon. Sean Simpson.
Wow, really?
Yeah, remember his Tuchenthal wildcard?
Yes, on a 350, was it?
See, this is, once again, this is media. This is media. Like, this is, I don't know. Like, I feel like there's so much more we could do with this information. I regret now just reading those out. We could have done a fun game for the listeners. And now I just give away the answers.
Well, why didn't you just write like a KTM Hall of Fame, a 400 for Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I started doing that. And then I realized it was going to take me a really long time.
But also, it might be more interesting to do it for other brands because there cannot be that many Honda riders since the start of 2004 that have taken Premier Class podium finishes. And also, they'll probably be quite diverse from the likes of Brian Jorgensen to Evgeny Bobryshev. I don't know. Frederick Bolle's name is sticking out, but that's probably because that was the first time I saw Honda's four-stroke being ridden in 2001.
I don't know.
But anyway, listen, it's a good stat, so 4 marks. But then I have another question for you because before we get to Jan Pansar, who was riding in KTM,
we have to talk about Jan Pansar because the people are demanding it.
Right, but before we talk about him, I have one more question for you. Isaac Giftin had a really good finish. I think he was P5 overall, just behind Fernandez, who full props to him for his second moto comeback and after tumbling off in that first corner. That was arguably one of the rides of the day. Giftin finished P5. If you were a team manager of Yamaha, would you sign Gifting over Valandron for 2026?
No, because
why?
Gifting is still too inconsistent. Would I give Gifting support? Yes. Would I find a better home for him? Yes. But would I give him a factory seat? Yes. But if you want to make the direct comparison to Calvin, I think Calvin is still steady, consistent, been on the podium this year and last. I think that you can still just count on Calvin more. And in Yamaha's position, they can't really roll the dice because they don't have much, many results to fall back on from the last 5 years. So I think it's too risky in their position. If they had if this Tim thing goes well and Tim's winning everything and then the second rider, whoever that, or well, Renault, and let's say Renault starts doing well again and it's all great, then maybe you can take a risk with a third rider like Gifting. But I think for now, you need to stay consistent, stay safe. And that's a message to our listeners as well. Stay safe out there.
I'm trying to consult our mutual friend Google to see the ages, because it says here that Isaac Gifting is 25 and Calvin Vallandren is 20, only just turned 29. So
also, obviously, the rumor is, or the potential for Yamaha to only run 2 MXGP riders is quite high. And also another stat, which this astounded me. This is the Lewis stat of the week. It's not really that good, but just the fact of it astounded me. And now I just need to find it quickly. Lucas Coenen has had 10 podiums in this season, in his MXGP career, 450 career. He is now one shy of Maxime Renault's total.
No, really?
I know, right? Lewis's stat of the week.
So Renault's on his third season in the Premier class and he has 11 podiums.
Adam, he's on his fourth.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, but we have to give concessions there. What did he miss? The whole of 2023 with that injury?
Yeah, that's great. But Lucas has raced 14 rounds. Also, like Lucas, like no matter how many races you want to take away from Renault and give him credit for, Lucas has still only started 14.
By the
counts, of the week.
Renault had a bit of a big crash, didn't he? Second moto in Loket. I mean, he was full cannonball helmet.
I know. I think he crashed in the first corner and then had no rear brake.
Oh right, okay.
Honestly, I don't know why he's back. Like, he's not healthy. The championship's gone. He's back next year. Just make him sit out for the rest of the year, even, and just
but he's done that. He must be utterly sick of sitting out.
It just seems too soon, and like I just want Renault to kind of fully reset, and I feel like this return isn't allowing that.
The other reason might be to try and sort out the Yamaha, because that's also not a bike that can start and obviously has other issues in terms of configuration.
Your mission for Lommel, find Renault and say, are you a test rider for Tim Geiser at the moment? And see if that goes down well.
That's like a Lewis Phillips question. I'm not going anywhere near that.
You can't say that. That's too controversial in the current climate.
So you would not sign. So you wouldn't sign Isaac Gifting. We have to give Isaac, full credit, because he did get the start, the second moto, which, as we pointed out, is essential to any kind of result in Loket. But I just love his hard charging style. Gifting is another rider who's like Calvin, had his injury issues, but I just kind of. I'd like to know what kind of ceiling he has for potential results, because there could be sort of, like Paul Jonas, like a podium guy there, just bubbling away, needing like the right opportunity in the right window, free of incident and accident. But yeah, I mean, I guess he's going to be another one on the market. I'm showing my ignorance there. Maybe he already has a contract for next year.
I don't think JK Racing is in the business of multi-year deals, if I'd hazard a guess.
Okay. Yeah, shrewd observation.
Thank you.
Jan Panzer.
It's why I'm so good at my job. No, but in the same token, why not sign Jan Panzer?
Yeah. Well, he did finish behind Jargo Gerst. I'm looking at the overall results here now.
Yep.
And Jeremy Sewer is just living in mid top 10 obscurity. It's like he's in purgatory. No, Jeremy, you're not allowed out. You're not allowed out of the top. You're not allowed out into the top 4, and you're not allowed out of the top 10.
We have to. Okay, on Jeremy, I got a lot of comments about him saying he's started being more outspoken about the fact that his issues are not his and more the team's. And a lot of people are texting me saying, where's this coming from? It's just Jeremy. It's fine, and he's allowed to say that. He's like, it's a new bike. Of course. Yeah. We should actually presume, looking at Jeremy Sewer's results, that this is a byproduct of the Ducati project and not because Sewer now sucks. Yeah. Of course, it's a prototype essentially. Of course. So I don't.
Yeah, I mean, he only had a factory engine 4 or 5 GPs ago.
Yeah, and he's only just got a new linkage.
Also, I think if a standard weekend is top 7, then that's something to build on. That's pretty encouraging. And also, I think he's experienced enough and has enough credibility to be able to say, listen, the team are not delivering in some aspects here.
Yeah, and I think you can kind of put 2 and 2 together and realize that by the move to Louis Vosters. And as I said at round 1 of MXGP, compare this to Aprilia, because that's the benchmark. They're doing phenomenal. Well done to everyone. We have to talk about Jan Panzer a little more because people are really going to be mad at us. Because people were mad
But
that we
what more
didn't
can
give
we
gifting
say?
credit. What is this a
I mean,
problem, Adam? Well
I
done
mean, he's a full privateer effort, as people can see on social media. He is literally racing out the back of a camper.
with his family.
Uh, yeah. So, all you can do is repeat tones of respect. That's all you can say, because he's doing it the old way, and he's doing it against convention. He's doing it against the sort of newfound spirit of MXGP, and that you have to be on like a team that has a wonderful multi-tiered workshop. He's still sort of delivering those results. Should he be there? No. There should be factory riders ahead of him, and I don't know. We all we can do is heap praise.
Okay, so how this is a better way to frame it. I feel like typically underdogs like Gifting and Panzer aren't not respected, not acknowledged. What's the word? They don't get the fruits of their labor in MXGP. This is not a prize money discussion, but ultimately they do just get a attaboy and we move on. You never hear of Panzer being linked to a factory team. I've not really heard much about Gifting either. Again, reaping the rewards for what he's done this year. So why is that? I personally think, quite simply, it's just because we have the factory teams and we have the bottom of the barrel teams, and we're lacking in middle standing constructs, what Wilvo was before it was a factory team. We're lacking in those Jackie Martins before in his successful times. We're lacking in those sort of strong A- level teams.
Yeah. Also, there's just different ways to do it. I mean, Julian Lieber was a rider that, had good backing and a good infrastructure. He generated his own sort of resources to go racing. There was good financial backing there. And, the way that Jan has got things set up, he's obviously found enough money to make it worthwhile and do it the way he's doing it. Perhaps that, say, like you mentioned Sean Simpson earlier, that he was a rider as well that, while he aspired to be in a factory team and to have access to all the resources and extra benefits of having that status, he also posted some of his best results when he was, just doing things in a very thorough way with a very small kind of setup with him and his dad and his family. Pansan may be in a similar scenario. We don't really know him that well. There's also the character of the rider. I mean, maybe he's a guy that doesn't really work. He's not conducive to like a factory environment where he also has to develop a motorcycle. I mean, a rider, someone like Tanel Leok, who you cannot fault for 1 second when it comes to his commitment, but you probably could look at him, with an observational eye and say, well, is he the right guy to give feedback to develop a factory motorcycle and give feedback to our technical base back in Japan to make the production bike better? Maybe not. But Pansar clearly has ability. He's been on the scene for a couple of years now, was a promising MX2 rider. Of course, the Slovenian team, kind of, I don't know what's the word, representative at the Motocross of the Nations. And someone like Alberto Ferrato, he's just sort of hovering in that weird space where he needs someone to give him a chance. And you just hope that, unlike Ferrato, it goes in a better direction for him. But yeah, as I said, full props.
Fair. There we go. I feel like we've satisfied everyone's urge for Panzer content. And you mentioned Prunierez.
Prunier or something like that.
You mentioned Prunier and his tremendous MXGP debut. He uses Polosport, as did Kevin Horgmo and Alberto Ferrato. Polosport have a wide range of offerings for your motorcycle, no matter where you live in the world or what you're after. One of them being their Polosport APT unbreakable levers. Snapping levers, that's weak and outdated. Polosport's APT unbreakable levers bend on impact, bend back to their original shape, and let you keep riding. With a stainless steel core built for war, they are rock solid strong and designed to match the OEM levers shape and specs. The Polosport's APT unbreakable levers stand up to every challenge. Thank you to Polosport for their support of this podcast. And as normal, Ben Watson was very impressive. His lap times were very good, but he hit the gate in the second race, so it's on him this time.
And just beat Adam Sterry. But he also beat Maxime Renault.
Which is a rivalry that goes back to 2021. It all revolves back to 2021 MXGP. It all comes back. Right, quickly. I have not, honestly, I had nothing to say on this podcast. I genuinely didn't know what we were going to talk about. And here we are. It's a disaster. Simon Längenfelder is going to win the MX2 World Championship. Accurate?
He extended his lead by what, 5 points, or was it more?
No,
No, it
more.
was more than that. Well, Adamo was second.
Oh, yeah, I guess, to be honest, I kind of just wrote Adamo off. So I was mainly looking at the gap to DeWolf, which
Impressive
he,
second motor by Adamo, I thought.
but I don't think Adamo's got it in him to pull back 47 points. Is that what the gap is?
Yeah, but Simon
28?
had a stinker in Finland. All he needs to do is have two more of those, and then suddenly the gap's going to be sort of Coenen and Febvre-esque.
I think I'm still not quite there with Adamo now, but DeWolf wise, I think the Lommel will be telling. If DeWolf can sweep the
Yeah.
board again and Lagenfelder has a ride similar to Finland, then DeWolf essentially undoes his subpar Loket and we're back on. But if Lagenfelder can keep it together and finish on the podium, which he did last year at Lommel, then I don't see where the door's going to open for either rider. I just think that the reason I favour De Wolf to challenge Lagenfelder over Adamo is I think that De Wolf can make use of these sand races, Lommel and Arnhem, whereas I don't see a string to Adamo's bow coming up. So I think that
How
Adamo would have to do
many?
it the hard way.
I'm going to get the results up now. How many points is Kai behind Lagenfelder at the top of the championship now?
59.
59. Okay. What? So there's 60 points. No, 62 points for a sweep and a Grand Prix. And this was actually, like Simon said on the post-race interview, the first GP that he's won of the four this year where he didn't go 1-1. So it's, of course, he didn't win
Oh,
on
yeah.
Saturday. Uh,
It's a very
but
good point.
Lagenfelder does have a trend of, when he pops up to win, he wraps up pretty much everything. And I wonder how he's going to handle the championship kind of pressure scenario as the races click down because, there does seem, I don't want to say like a soft underbelly there because, Simon's like a hardened GP rider with experience now in the MX2 class, but then he does also have these moments of madness, like in Finland where he could just, almost gift points to somebody. I think Adamo may be slightly harder in that aspect, but then Andrea just he's been a bit too inconsistent with the motos. One being really good, like in the second one on Sunday, and then I think he had a bad start and crashed in the first moto, even though he came back to something like P7, P8. So it's hard to say. But when we were talking about KTM for 2026, Lewis, we have to remember that if Kai actually does peg this back and win it, then he has to jump up anyway into a 450 because he will have two MX2 titles. So that's something else KTM will have to have a contingency for.
I think win or lose, it's time for Kai to move up, right? Like
Yeah.
it's big
Yeah.
as well. Like, and ultimately, I think when you see someone in Kai's position who wins the championship and then loses it, it almost never ends well. Them trying to right the wrong and recapture it, it kind of tends to follow a
Yeah.
downhill path. Just cut your losses. I won one of those. On to new things. Um, I want to. First of all, to your point on Lagenfelder, I was very concerned in Saturday's qualifying race because his timid nature, the way De Wolf pulled away from him quite easily, I was thinking to myself, is the pressure getting to him? And he's already starting to melt off the back of Finland as well. But obviously, that wasn't the case at all. Sunday proved that. On the last podcast, without knowing the Loket results, of course, you said that De Wolf was your favourite and you could even be tempted to put Adamo above Lagenfelder. I presume
Yeah.
this has now changed.
No.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay.
No, I'm keeping that. And also, I think Kai's going to have a field day in Lommel. So he's going to put himself right back into contention. And if I was Lagenfelder, again, I don't want to disrespect him because, he's leading the championship and he's done a phenomenal job. So he's not shit on any surface or scenario. But he's going to have to go to Lommel and think, I need to be as close to Kai as possible. And Adamo has improved his sand riding significantly after all that work with Joel Smets. So I think he'll have a similar kind of outlook. But you just have to keep the Wolf within touching distance in Belgium and not concede too many points to him because that gap now, what did you say it was? 50,
59.
59? That's not going to be 59 after next weekend.
Well, let's play it like this. If the results at Lommel and Arnhem play out exactly as they did in Finland, which obviously won't happen. But in Finland, Kai took 22 points out of Längenfelder. So if he does that in Lommel and Arnhem, that's 44. The gap is down to 15, which is actually quite crazy. So the risk is there for Längenfelder, but he's got the benefit of having an advantage. We should talk about Mattis Valan, his first podium for Kawasaki as a factory MX2 team. The 23rd MX2 podium finisher from France. That's the 445th MX2 trophy for the nation of France. So well done to them.
Who was the last Kawasaki MX2 podium finisher?
Horgmo.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, I forget about F&H for some reason.
What about Harrop? Did he get one as well?
Yeah, he got like 5 or so.
But that would have been the same season?
No, Horgmo got 1 in 23, 1 in 22. I think all of Harrop's came in 22.
Right.
Before
Before that, it would have been.
And then Rowan had one.
Jacoby.
Yeah, Jacoby.
Kawasaki.
Jacoby and Rowan. But then, well, let me put it up.
But for the factory, for the factory effort, like you say, that's the first one. Maybe I would want to say for the first time since Jordi Tixier in 2015 when he was riding for KRT.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, so how about this? MX2 was introduced in 2004. How many podiums do you think Kawasaki has had in that category?
Well, I mean, Christophe Bourcel and Sebastian Bourcel contributed quite a few. Gautier Paulin as well probably gave a couple, and then Tommy Searle. There was, that was the sort of the good years for Kawasaki. I'll pick a number out of the sky. Podiums in MX2, 46.
145.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
Yeah,
right, okay, miles off.
But my point
That's shocking. Right,
yeah,
okay,
because I forget the good years were as good as that for Kawasaki in MX2. Like, okay, Tommy and Christoph, but when you look at it, you're like, oh wow, Kawasaki were actually doing serious damage in MX2. And ultimately,
what the fuck happened? Kawasaki, your race department. I mean, there's been, all the stuff I've seen with Steve on Twitter about, Nicoletti riding in the Canadian Championships and the Prado scenario. By the way, Prado is just blowing up, Lewis, over there. It seems just in a different way than I ever would have imagined. And then, of course, Febvre being, and I thought, is there any other Kawasaki racing presence? There's nothing in MotoGP, nothing in Superbike because now they're running Bimotors. Nothing in off-road. I mean, Kawasaki, are they spiraling down the plug hole?
I think we've said this, like Febvre winning the championship for Kawasaki, I think it's huge to maintain interest. I really do. Yeah. Because they've not got much else to shout about. And even, what would be interesting? And I know a lot of people in America hate it, in the pits hate it when I do this. I should add up total wins across America and MXGP per manufacturer. Because ultimately, although everyone wants to pick a side, it's all part of one global racing effort. And it's all representative of their motocross effort. Like, I've had a manufacturer here say, yeah, we win it, we do well in America. We don't need to worry about MXGP. And it's like, well, no, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
So I'll do an article point being, I think this article, at least recent, would show that Kawasaki is far down the order compared to Honda, KTM, and even Yamaha, because although Yamaha hasn't done much in MXGP, obviously in America, their stats would be bolstered. And Prado,
I remember
who knows?
Visiting Yamaha's factory in 2005, Communications Plaza. There was maybe Chad Reed's Yamaha of Troy bike in the display, but Stefan Emmets's Yamaha wasn't really anywhere to be seen. And I'm sure someone told me an anecdote once that, the US series was, and Supercross was all that really sort of mattered. But then I also find that a little bit hard to believe because the FIM World Championship stamp is something that is incredibly important to the manufacturers because it is the ultimate marketing tool. And also the reason why a lot of, alternative series, they don't survive because they just don't have that FIM stamp, that sanctioning. That's really what creditable partners and industry people want.
You know what, Adam? I believe that part of the podcast is going to be clipped and played in every single WSX board meeting from now on. I think you've just earned yourself some new friends. Um,
Well,
they're
I
going to be
mean,
stoked.
we've said before, oh, very quickly tangent on that. I hope that series is a success, but then, it's a different concept to what it was and how it was launched. But it would be good to have a world Supercross championship there, but the MO for the organizers has to be vastly different to what it was and how it was in the beginning.
Agreed. Agreed. I don't really understand their model,
Anything,
but
yeah. Anything more on MX2?
no, congrats to
Valin,
Romain.
yeah, props to Valin. It's also worth pointing out that he trains with Romain Febvre. He's like a training partner for him. So, he's got a barometer there for speed and experience. So that's I paid off on that occasion, I guess. Sasha Coenen, finishing fourth just ahead of Kai. A bit of a sort of lackluster weekend for Kai, but then he will build up towards that speed. In Belgium, of course. And Oreo, we've been talking about Oreo Oliver in recent GPs. He missed Finland, didn't he, due to illness? I think he was racing in Czech Republic, but I don't really know what happened to him.
Speaking of Oriol, and he listens to this podcast, so maybe he can message us and tell us that we're crazy. There was a little rumor around the time of our last podcast that he tested the second factory Kawasaki 450.
Oh, right. Okay.
And I don't know why. Well, I mean, obviously you can figure out why if it's true. Apparently, the source on it is very good. It was his girlfriend who was telling people. So, um,
Yeah.
I
I
don't
just saying,
really understand.
I've been half listening to you, Lewis, because I was checking out the press release from the Gabriel SS24 KTM team, and he's still battling illness. So
What is it?
Oliver tried to ride in Czech Republic, but I don't know if it's a case of Epstein-Barr, but it seems to have gone on for a couple of weeks.
Well, um, unless those PRs have improved, they are also battling a series of typos and grammatical errors. So that's also going on behind the scenes. Um, no,
uh,
the only other thing from MX2 that stood out to me is over the last 7 GPs, Sasha Coonan has gone 3-3-8 first, 3-3-4, which is
consistency.
a marked improvement for him. So I felt like we should point that out because obviously everyone's quick to take jabs at him for his crashes, including us.
Yes. But he does seem to be very dismissive of his performances if he's not out winning. And you kind of think, listen, mate, just take what you can on any given day, have that kind of solid approach. I mean, the second moto was terrible. He says he was last off the start, whereas he finished P2 in the first one. I just think, Sasha maybe, or at least publicly in his statements, needs to be a bit more realistic, about his continuing education at World Championship level. And we mentioned Oliver's, and it's only right that we should mention that, Guillaume Ferrez was Spain's top rider in P6, behind the Wolf and the first Triumph home.
Yeah, I think McClellan does end up going back to Triumph as well, so that will end up being the same team because Fares is on a 2-year deal, and I think McClellan deserves it. He was actually very fast at Loket, just too many mistakes, but I think the speed was noteworthy. Um, yeah. Anything else? Final thoughts?
Predictions for Lommel then?
Oh, I really don't know if Coonan can handle it, but I will
Oh, that's
say that
interesting.
I will say, well, I've got the evidence of last year.
Yeah, but he's going to learn from that.
I guess. I mean, but has the family learnt from that? I guess is another question.
Different
Um,
team.
True. I'm just pulling it up for complete factual. I can't even see.
I'm
I'm
going to
going to
say
make
Lucas and Kai. I've already
Lucas.
pretty much intimated it, but
Lucas was seventh overall in MX2 last year with a 5.8, and from what I remember, many crashes. Um,
yeah,
no,
but
yeah,
also context of that, he pulled into the pit lane like twice, I think, and still got back to eighth in that second moto or the first. So his lap times were phenomenal
I
on
do
that
remember his lap
250.
times being incredible at some point. Okay, so okay, you've convinced me. I'll go Lucas with Roman nipping at his heels, and yeah, Kai.
Does Jago Hertz, as we should perhaps say it in the right way, does he pop up with a surprise podium?
He's getting better. It's not really noticeable because it's so slow and step by step, but I think it's getting better. I don't know what he does next year either, to be honest.
Yeah, well, it's his home track, and he's fast in the sand, of course. And Ben Watson, hopes for Ben. Maybe a track where starts are not so crucially important as they were in Czech Republic. So a, s- I'm expecting a solid top 10 at least, maybe a top 7, being optimistic.
Well, you can bet that whatever result he gets, he will be coming from around 22nd on lap one. So, um, whatever result will be a heroic effort because he will make more passes than anyone else. Yes, indeed. Also, final point I wanted to mention. Actually, no, I can't mention it because it's too obvious what I was going to dance around something, but it's very obvious why this came into my head because of what we were just talking about. So I'll save that for another week. Anything else?
Terrible podcasting, Lewis.
Well,
Terrible.
no. Okay, yes. I, I don't
What
know.
about what rider?
Well, we were just talking about Ben, and I went, "Oh, by the way, something that I was going to mention," and then I realized that
What?
that was very obvious.
Oh, right. Okay. So Ben could be riding somewhere and you're not allowed to say it.
No, no, Ben's on a 2 year
Oh,
contract.
all right. Uh,
Also,
so what's the big issue then?
I'll tell you after the podcast, but, and then when
But
everyone's
again, terrible
forgotten,
podcasting. People are going to want to, listeners are not interested in what you're
I
telling me
don't know if
off
he's
the
going to
recording.
Australia. Let's leave it there.
Ah, right. What? Yeah, that is also going to be one of the critical things for those GPs. I mean, who is going to be able to afford to get to China, then to Australia, and then also be able to field a rider for the Motocross of Nations in the US?
But, and
I'm
also,
worried.
a tangent to that is what I'm starting to learn is that a lot of the smaller teams, especially, are trying to charge for federations to send the bikes from Australia to America. And the federations are like,
Wow.
yeah, we're
Yeah.
out.
It's going to be a big test for the sport and also for the first Grand Prix in Australia since 2001. What's it going to look like if you only have 10 riders in the
No,
gate? I
I
mean,
think they
I
can have
know
a lot of
Australian
wild
rider,
cards.
yeah, Australian riders will pad it out, but still, it's not going to be a great look for, for the both the sport and also for the Australian organizers. Even if they can get some VIPs or political interest, they've been trying to sell this thing, of course, as a world championship event, and maybe a big profile. It's something I think in front needs to be walking around the paddock saying, guys, are you definitely in, and provide the assistance necessary.
Well, weren't we at a point where the teams can go for free? I swear we got to that point.
Well, I mean, I know there was a build-up story, wasn't there? Was it like a press release or something saying, "Oh, everything's looking good for Australia," like in the last couple of days.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's one GP I would sort of like to go to.
Yeah, same.
I think it'll be interesting to see why Darwin, and what the track looked like. It's, an ambitious project. So I just hope it's a good turnout and we were dubious over the Argentine GP at the start of the year, and it looked pretty good. If it has the same kind of gathering of fans, then for the season closer. But let's not also forget, Lewis, like we just said in MX2, it's going to be like a 62 point sort of bounty. So it could be worth getting there for those riders who want to sort of move up a couple more positions.
Yeah, I'm skeptical, very much so, over who goes to Australia and now how difficult it's going to be for some teams to field a Motocross of Nations team. But that's not for us to worry about. We're not on logistics. We can be if someone
Yes.
wants us to be. Reach out. Um, right, done.
Done.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of the MXGP Podcast Show. In fact, I forgot to tell you about Prox Racing Parts, didn't I? You thought we were done. No, we're not. Pro-X.com for all aftermarket parts for your motorcycle. Head there. An easy-to-use select your ride function, year, make, and model. Head there, put in your motorcycle, and you will get a long, long list of options that will only improve your steed. Once again, if your clutch is slipping, brand new goggles are not going to help you one little bit, but pro-x.com will indeed. That's it. Episode whatever, the Grand Prix of Czechia is in the books. We are on to Flanders in Belgium, Lommel for round 15 of the 2025 FIM Motocross World Championship, and we will see you in 7 days' time to discuss all of that. Thanks for listening.